Tonight, a blistering portrayal of President Trump from his former National Security Advisor John Bolton. Bolton writes the Trump presidency is not grounded in philosophy, grand strategy, or policy. It is grounded in Trump. Adding, I'm hard-pressed to identify any significant Trump decision during my White House tenure that wasn't driven by reelection calculations. In a copy of his book obtained by NBC News, Bolton writes during President Trump's trade negotiations with China, he was pleading with President Xi to ensure he'd win, offering to reduce tariffs in exchange for some increases in Chinese farm product purchases to help win the crucial farm state vote. Bolton writes the president at points was willing to halt criminal investigations to in effect give personal favors to dictators he liked, citing cases involving China and Turkey, writing the pattern looked like obstruction of justice as a way of life. Bolton says he reported his concerns to Attorney General William Barr, but he acknowledges they are not necessarily impeachable offenses and that he does not know everything that happened. Bolton, who left last year, he says he resigned, the president says he fired him, also makes more personal allegations, saying the president asked if Finland was a part of Russia, and that during a meeting, Secretary of State Mike Pompeo passed him a note insulting President Trump, saying he is so full of expletive. The White House has not responded to Bolton's accusations, but the Justice Department yesterday filed suit to delay publication, arguing Bolton never completed a mandatory review to protect national security secrets, and says the manuscript is rife with classified information.
Any conversation with me is classified. Then it becomes even worse if he lies about the conversation.
Bolton's lawyer has denied the book contains classified information and says the administration dragged out its review process to keep the president from being embarrassed. So far, neither the Attorney General nor Secretary of State has responded to Bolton's accusations.
Hey, NBC News fans, thanks for checking out our YouTube channel. Subscribe by clicking on that button down here and click on any of the videos over here to watch the latest interviews, show highlights, and digital exclusives. Thanks for watching.